The Luminous Mind, episode 005.
It really does not matter what you say. What matters is what people hear.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Our next fire starter is Dave Hasenbalg. Dave has spent the last 20 years leading, coaching, and consulting businesses to build collaborative cultures to enable them to make a mark on their industry. He helps organizations find solutions to real-world challenges by illuminating blind spots, building collaborative teams, and coordinating action that produces results. He has an expertise in developing leaders, bringing about change in organizations of all sizes, and eliminating the impediments of effective execution. His practical background is as a military officer as well as a leader in cutting-edge nonprofit and Fortune 100 companies. Dave has earned an MBA and is also a graduate of several U.S. military specialties and leadership schools. He is a certified leadership coach from the Institute of Generative Leadership and Newfield Network. He is also certified to teach social style and versatility from the Traycon Group and is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt from Breakthrough Management Group and Hartford Financial Group. Dave is an accredited coach and a member of the International Coaching Federation. Dave has led a number of high-profile business units and client projects. Check out our website to learn more about Dave. Welcome, Dave, to the Luminous Mind.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
So I've told our audience a little bit about you. Would you like to expound upon your business and your personal life?
Sure. My company is really focused on developing leadership capabilities within all types of organizations, but a specific niche that I found is the leadership within independent schools. And when we talk about leadership, a lot of times people will look at it as a quote unquote soft skill. It's that touchy feely stuff, and if we get around to it, we'll work on it, but we've got real work to do. But one of the things that I've found is that the specific outcomes of any organization, but specifically schools, the results that they produce are a direct reflection on the kind of leadership that is taking place and the kind of leadership conversations that are happening or not happening at the school. And so I'm particularly passionate around making sure that the schools can produce results through the effective development of leaders in the schools.
Great. And so can you tell me why leadership would be important in these schools? I mean, you said that they kind of tiptoe around it, but why is that so important?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. So when you look at specifically just within the operation, the functioning of an educational institution, it doesn't happen by accident. And most schools spend a lot of time and effort finding the really talented educators to come and teach classes for their students. And what happens in, I would say, at least 8 out of 10 times of all the schools that I've done work with, what you see happening is the really good educators, the good faculty members who do a really good job, when there's an opportunity for, let's say, a department head position, they're the ones that usually get tapped on the shoulder and say, hey, you're a great teacher. We're going to have you be the department head, which means now suddenly you're in charge of not only your classes, but also the performance of 3 to 5 or however many other faculty members. And it's not just something that because you're a super performer, you could suddenly become the supervisor or manager of somebody else. It requires a different set of skills. Some people naturally orient themselves to it and some don't. But when you look at the administrative function of a school, you see that same scenario perpetuating itself throughout each of the levels. And so the department head who manages to be successful gets tapped to be the dean of some kind, dean of students, dean of faculty, associate dean of faculty, something like that. And then they develop their careers on the administrative side to become, head of school, associate head of school, things like that. But one of the things that I've seen that it was a little bit of a surprise, but it's actually quite universal, is that nowhere along that path did anybody really ever get the chance to develop those managerial leadership skills. So you've got these super performers, these great teachers who, through their own struggles and through their own studies, may have figured it out, but a lot of them, just haven't ever had that grounding of those baseline leadership skills. So that's the part of it from the operation and the function of the school. And the second side of it, when you look at it from the student's perspective, if you look at a lot of the research and actually, Gallup and some other organizations, have looked at some of their global CEO studies, and IBM has done one of those as well. 75% of CEOs say that in order for our companies to be successful in the markets of tomorrow, we really need employees, people coming out of schools who have the skills to communicate, who are emotionally intelligent, and who know how to collaborate with other people. Well, where do these employees come from? They come from the colleges where they're supposed to be able to learn that. And where do those colleges get those students? It's from the upper schools, the high schools, where they're taught how to do that, or hopefully they're taught how to do that. But most schools actually are rooted in the 40s, 50 years ago model of what is student leadership. It's just now I get to be quote unquote the boss, and if I am trained as a student leader, most of the time that really means I just know I'm trained on how to call 911 when necessary or do something, and I'm not really ever taught how to collaborate and how to lead other people. So it's two sides of it for leadership in schools.
So one with school culture, and then one with just developing great leaders in your student body. So
exactly.
Great.
And one of the best ways to develop great student leaders is to lead by example. And if we have administrators who really don't have the skills, where are they learning it?
Exactly. So how do you suggest that administrators, first of all, you would probably suggest that they get trained, which I see on your website is a great training program for administrators and managers, and then team collaboration. But how would you suggest they go about implementing leadership skills for their students?
One of the things that I find so crucial when you're starting on this journey to explore and improve yourself as a leader, and I think that's a key point. It's not just a class that you take or a workshop that you do. Leaders really never stop developing themselves. Really good leaders are always looking for ways to do things better or ways to learn something new. So that's probably the first thing, is say, this is something this is going to be a lifelong journey of learning for you. And I think, so getting people to that mindset is the first step. And once they've got that step down, the first thing that I teach, whether it's student leaders or administrators, and this a little bit different than what most people might expect, particularly coming from somebody like myself, who has a background in the military. You have this expectation that leadership is really about being the boss and command and control, and I tell you what to do, and you do what you do what I tell you, and you don't ask questions. And that's probably about the furthest thing from the truth. There are very very few scenarios when the proverbial or the literal bullets are flying when that's actually an appropriate course of action for a leader. So the first thing you have to learn is self-awareness, is understanding that the way I like to do things, or I tend to do things in a situation, and recognize the fact that that's just your preference. Not everybody likes to do it that way. In fact, a lot of people probably hate to do it that way. So some of that self-awareness, so that you can then understand just how you're showing up in any given situation. And there's a lot of awareness of, your own moods and emotions, what kind of triggers tend to set you off, what situations make you comfortable or uncomfortable, because leaders really have to operate in this realm of discomfort. In order to be really effective, you've got to allow other people to be more comfortable. So they have to operate in that space of discomfort. So self-awareness is a huge, huge piece of it. And we spend a lot of time teaching how to do that, including, some centering grounding exercises, to learn how to breathe and, feel yourself when you're getting worked up. The second piece of that then is situational awareness and being able to develop your team. So if I know myself and I can work on myself, then I also need to teach the people that I'm leading and help them to do that. So I develop my team. And then once I've done that, then I can deploy my team and I can teach them how to work together to coordinate action, to produce results that are valuable to my constituents, whether they be customers, parents, board members, or whatever they may be. So it really starts with that. And there's a myriad of things to be aware of as you're, starting on that journey.
Great. Would you suggest that leaders ever try to get feedback from their team? Is that a skill that you find is helpful in their development, or do you suggest that they try to get feedback elsewhere?
Great question. It's a great question. And the short answer is absolutely. Listening, and I would, extrapolate from the question. There's one key skill that every leader has to have, and it's about listening. And when I say listening, and this is one of the things that I tell everybody that I coach, everybody that I work with, it really doesn't, especially as a leader, it really does not matter what you say. What matters is what people hear, because that's what they will interpret, and that's what they will base their level of commitment on, and that level of commitment will determine if and how they're going to take any kind of action. And so the only way to determine if people are hearing what it was that you were trying to say is if you are really good at listening. And that's listening not just in terms of the words, but it's also listening in terms of the nonverbals, the body language, in my facial expressions. Am I giving you the indication that I'm really bought into and committed to what it is that you're saying? So getting the feedback from your team is really essential, but largely because, or through the skill of listening. That's why, we say the old adage is that's why you've got two ears and one mouth, is because you're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk.
Do you find that maybe if you are well trained as far as your leadership goes, that the turnover isn't quite as high?
Oh yes, there's been a number of studies that have been done about engagement and the value that can be returned just by investing in leadership training and developing leaders. One of the things that I try to emphasize to the schools that I work with is that don't look at developing your leaders as an expense. This is really an investment, because you will get a return on that. And in the return, to your point, is exactly that. You're going to get less turnover. You're going to have more collaborative environments. You're going to get more results with the same people that you have, because they're more committed, they're more bought in. So it really does pay dividends. And on the flip side of that, or the negative side of that, people, and again, research has shown this as well, 64% of people would say they would leave their job today to follow a good manager to another organization.
Wow.
So the adage is true. People don't leave companies, they don't leave organizations, they leave bosses. And if you don't have the skills to be a good boss, to be a good leader, you're right, people are actively looking for opportunities to go somewhere else. And that's why it's so crucial to develop these skills.
Great. This is a great time to take a break.
If you would like to see your business grow, then contact us at The Luminous Mind for advertising space on theluminousmind.net or on the podcast, The Luminous Mind Podcast.
Welcome back to The Luminous Mind. So I'm going to go more individual then, because on your website I noticed you have individual coaching, and I'm going to kind of turn it back into the home because we deal with a lot of parents and home issues.
Sure.
How do I personally, as a parent, how do I become a better leader for my children to help inspire them to be good leaders?
Great. That's a really good question, because inevitably I get the question when we talk about leadership, and most of the time we start off leadership in organizations, and it's not long before the light bulbs start going off and people are saying, wait a second, I think I can use this at home too. And duh, yeah, you can, because we're just people. You're just learning how to work with and get the most from people. So when you're a parent, particularly, you're a leader. You're influencing the outcomes and the behaviors of other people. The same skills apply. And so to start to be a better leader at home, and with your students, with your children who are students, or even your spouse, significant other, it really starts with that same thing. It's that self-awareness, is understanding that because I'm interpreting things in a certain way does not mean that that's actually a fact. And I talk a lot about the distinctions between facts and assessments. And an assessment is just an opinion. It is just a judgment that I have about something. A fact is something that we can measure. Somebody else can determine it. So if I walk into a room and say it's hot, that's just an assessment. Because what's hot to me may be just fine to somebody else, or cold to another person. If I said it's 72 degrees, that's a fact. And what we find with a lot of leaders, particularly ones at home, they are treating assessments as if they are a fact. And so having that awareness to say, hey, that's good, that's bad, that's right, that's wrong, those are all flag words that I call them. Those are all flag words for assessments. What's good, right, good, wrong, bad. It's just an opinion. Now I can talk about how to ground that opinion. I've got to ground my assessment. But having the awareness to know when I'm working with facts versus assessments is a key part of self-awareness.
So what are some successes that you've seen in your leadership training?
Boy, I don't know, how much time do you have for your? I've been very blessed to have some tremendous opportunities and work with some great client organizations and even individuals. I've had some folks that were on the verge of, they felt like they were on the verge of getting terminated, to turning around their personal careers and taking on additional responsibilities, getting promotions. I've had teams that were in disarray, that had turnover upwards of 70-80% over the previous year, turn it around to become really high performing teams, to the point that they became the poster child, so to speak, for the organization. In some cases, and this is the reality of coaching, you realize that as you learn about the nature of the culture and the relationship that's in place, sometimes the relationship has either been damaged, and I say the relationship that's within the organization, the client organization. The relationship has been damaged to the point that the best choice might be for people to kind of move on, and you kind of help people to do that in a graceful and respectful way, and you've got two people who are then in a healthier place in different organizations, and they're still thriving there. So sometimes it's recognizing what won't work.
Great. What is the one thing that you're doing with your business that maybe you're most excited about?
Lately, and I say lately as in probably the last quarter, the last 3 months, I've been doing a lot more content, a lot more writing, putting more up on the blogs, and that's been kind of exciting to see the reaction for some of that. We've got starting in February of this year, we're doing another administrator series for independent schools. So that'll be exciting to get that group, and that's a fun program, because what we do is we find a host school who will kind of provide the facilities, And then we bring in people to go through a 3-module workshop. So every month we have a workshop, and each workshop builds on the previous one. So you really, by the 3rd month, you really get deep into some very advanced leadership skills. And then we do individual coaching in between those workshops. And so it really helps people to grasp some broader skills and then learn how to apply those in a very deep manner at their particular schools. And so that's a real exciting one. And we're doing that again this winter to spring semester. And we'll probably do over an advanced or accelerated version over the summer as well. So those are always really exciting.
Oh, that's great. So what are some long-term goals that you guys have for yourselves?
The long-term, I guess the biggest long-term goal that I've got is again trying to reach out and impact as many schools as I can. I'm particularly passionate about the impact of leadership in schools, not just from a professional capacity, but as a parent. I'm a father of 2 daughters. I've got a 16 and a 14-year-old daughter, so they're right in that high school age, and I have an appreciation from that side of life that has really demonstrated to me that these are people and what they learn and how they learn and the environment in which they learn are really important. And the work that people who are educators in any capacity do, the work that they do is just too important, particularly within the world today. There's a lot that's coming at the students and these kids. It's coming at them fast, and the pace of change and the capabilities in terms of technology are just unbelievable. And it takes a little bit of leadership to kind of help craft their interpretation of that and how they see it. So the way educators and what they do is just too crucial to leave to chance.
Yeah, because the time is really short that we have to prepare the youth. So what are some changes you'd like to see in the future? I mean, kind of going off that same, in education and then maybe in leadership in general.
One of the changes, and it's kind of one of my causes of leadership, when it comes to leadership. And a lot of times people, when they hear leadership, they think about, it's either a position in the organization or it's about me being able to put together a really great, strategic plan or to put together project plans and do these other things. And that, in my view, has always been very, very short-sighted. And the reality is throughout the entirety of human history, nobody has been able to lead another person without being able to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've kind of made my cause of leadership is, learning to have a leadership conversation, understanding the kind of discussion that needs to happen, whether it's, performance or strategy or this, those are all happen in the context of a conversation. And then you structure that. And that's what people who go through, my training, we definitely go through that and, teach them how to structure and plan for, a leadership conversation. And it's not something to take lightly. The metaphor that I use is like painting a room. You can't just walk in there and throw some paint on a wall and think you're going to do a great job. The work is in the preparation, and it takes a lot of foresight to figure out, what are the colors that I need? How do I clean it and tape it? And I do the edging, all the stuff, putting the tarps down. All of that stuff takes the time, but it's also what makes it effective. And then I can go ahead and do the painting. And the same thing happens with leadership conversations. It's the preparation that makes it work. But a lot of people think that, effective leaders is I just walk into a room and I bark orders and I walk out and aren't I great?
Yeah. And I think we all forget the power that we all have to be leaders. I mean, that's one thing I've kind of taught my children the last few years. I've noticed when you're doing something different, like homeschooling, or you're running an independent school that kind of goes away from the norm, that puts you in a position of leadership, and what you say and what you do and all those tiny little conversations that you have with people can really move them in a direction that they never, that you never expected, and that they may have never imagined. So I think individual coaching and leadership is really important just for the average person.
Absolutely.
I would agree with you.
You're absolutely right. The leadership is really just being able to influence the commitment and the outcomes and behaviors of other people. It's not a position. And that's one of the areas where, for some folks that I know in the academic world, they'll take exception to it. But the way I describe it is, management is just authority granted by the institution. You're filling a role.
Yeah.
And with it, you may have some, people management kind of responsibilities. But leadership is authority granted by the people who are being led.
Oh, I love that.
And when you are a leader, you can be a leader in the middle of an organization with no, institutional quote unquote authority. But if you're the one that everybody comes to and asks, are we really going to do this? Well, guess what? You're a leader.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you've talked a little bit about administrative leadership, but that goes back to being, just the teacher in the classroom is a leader.
Yes.
And leading that along. So, how would you like to see the world change in the future?
I hinted at it. Is it?
Yeah.
I would, the world would change. I would love to see people knowing how to have conversations and know how to listen to each other, to coordinate action, to create a tomorrow that is better than it is today.
Yeah.
And people who have these leadership skills, whether they're administrators in schools, whether they homeschool, whether they're students, the capability is there, the possibility is there, and it's ripe for the taking. And I would love to have everybody that that I interact with walk away with those skills so that they can make their world a better place.
Great. So do you have a favorite book or resource that you would want to share with us? I'm sure might be your website.
I've got, thank you. Yeah, I do have a website. It's customized-solutions.com, and also for the independent schools, there's independentschoolleadership.com. I have a lot of articles and resources available there. I'm a big believer, I'm a big reader, big believer that leaders are readers, because there's so much that you don't know. That's part of that self-awareness. And so opening yourself up to learning new things is so crucial to be really effective. So there's some great books that are out there. One that I inevitably, a couple of them I keep recommending because it helps, especially people who want to change organizations or change outcomes. There's a couple of them. Chip and Dan Heath have a book called Switch that I frequently recommend. The Power of Habit is a good leadership book as well. There's just a Good to Great is by Jim Collins is a phenomenal book. Talking about what makes organizations stick. But you can also learn from the mistakes as well. There's a book called Presidencies Derailed, which is about higher education and educational presidencies that did not go well. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned in those kind of books as well.
Great. Yeah. Bad examples are also very good examples of what not to do. Mm-hmm. So
absolutely.
So you've given us a lot of great resources and quotes. Before we say goodbye, do you have any parting words of advice or maybe a favorite quote that you'd like to share? And then tell us how we can get in contact with you.
Oh, great. Thank you. The parting advice, I guess, would be you go out, leaders, everybody can go out and engage in conversations to create the future, because, as an instructor of mine, Bob Dunham says, go out and create the future because you are already. So make it one that matters to you. And so that's always very powerful quote that resonates with me.
Yeah, that is great.
Get in touch with me. As I said, my website, you can always reach me at our business phone 860-796-1986, and customized to -solutions.com or independentschoolleadership.com.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a fun conversation about how to be a better leader, and I hope that all of our listeners get out and check out his website because it is quite interesting. So thank you. We need more fire starters. To join us, go to our website, theluminousmind.net, and click on the Fire tab. You'll be able to schedule an appointment today. Also, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Google+, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Help us light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.